Welcome to Universal Furniture. My name is Neil McKenzie. I'm the Senior Vice President of Marketing here. And if it's your first time here, thank you for coming. If you're coming back once again, thank you so much. There's a ton to see, as always. So real quick, on floor 3, we have a new modern collection. A few things different this year. So that collection is about 188 pieces. There's a ton in there. All that stuff is actually available to pre-order right now today. So you can actually talk to the front desk. If you scan the items, we have these scanners. Everything in the showroom is tagged. So you can actually go around and scan as many things as you like. And then when you check out, you get an email and you can click on that. It'll take you over to the item. So if you are interested in placing a pre-order for any of the items that you see that are new this year, you have the ability to do that. And then if you want to see anything in the showroom, just check in at the front desk and they'll be happy to send you on your way. Floor 2, we have some great in-stock looks with Aaron Valentich and Miranda Kerr. And then on floor 1, the ground floor that we're on, we have our cafe. We have the Designer's Lounge, which has some fun activations happening, including the lovely smells that you probably smelled when you walk in from Lavoon Candle. There's a pop-up there. And then we also have our new special order offering for dining chairs. Those are available in 450 fabrics, and there's 7 frames that you can choose from. So you can go back and explore all of that. And again, if you need anything, just check in the front desk, and they'll be happy to help you and or kind of direct you accordingly. So welcome again to Universal. I'm going to hand it off to Byron, who's going to introduce this great panel. And again, thanks for visiting with us.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you, Universal, and thank you to all of you who made it out to High Point Market. You survived. Okay, so we're going to start by opening up our Bibles to the 2nd of Corinthians. No. Oh, wrong panel. Okay, so Showhouses. I feel like a lot of people always go, they know about it. It's kind of like when Soul Cycle first opened. It just kind of popped up, and then you're like, what is that? I don't know what it is, but I want to go to it. Am I going to be able to do it? Am I ready? Am I fit enough? And so Showhouses kind of have that same allure where it's like, what is the point of this? And should I even consider it? And so today we have very established interior designers from all over the nation that have participated in Showhouses, both physical, television shows, pop-ups, and a virtual show house. And so we're really excited to kind of deep dive, let you in on all the things that you should consider before thinking if you're ready for a show house. And that is everything from time to money, budgeting. We're going to have some horror stories, some great stories that came out of it. And ultimately, what are the benefits of participating in show houses? So I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves. Just do a quick where you're from, where you're based, and one word that describes your personality, not your design, your personality.
This wasn't on the question list. Kristen Bartone. I'm an hour from here in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And a word that what? What's that? I have a word that describes me. Energetic.
Hi, I'm Keisha Franklin. I'm based in Montclair, New Jersey. And my company's Halden Interiors. And I am a minimalist with maximalist intentions.
I am Ridhima Brar from Arterior Studios. I am based in Los Angeles. And one word, I would just say friendly.
I'm Andrew Savalsky. I'm from New York City. I've been there a long time. And can I use 2 words?
Yeah.
Industriously creative.
I'm scared to go now. I'm Everett Brown, also based in New York, and one word, outgoing.
Okay. Okay, let's just jump right in. All right, so what was the selling point? What was that final consideration where you're like, okay, I'm ready. I need to do this right now for my business? Let's start with Ridhima, California.
Me. So I participated in 2 showcases. The first one was the Kaleidoscope project, and the second one was the Pasadena Showcase House earlier this year. So both of them very different showcases. First one was an opportunity that was presented to me. I had just started in this space. So at that time, the whole idea was, all right, this is my time to just show what I can do and legitimize myself as a designer, because there's some, it's going to get a lot of press, it's going to get a lot of media, some attention, and just for the sake of experience, I really wanted to jump in and give it a try. And then with Pasadena earlier this year, it's a local showcase house there. So the benefits of the first one impacted a lot of my decision making for the second one. And so the idea there was, all right, let me now focus a little bit more on my local market, and see if I can get more eyeballs on my work and myself and just get myself out there locally. So that was the intention for that particular one. So I feel like with each showcase, there's one intention that you're trying to figure out and there's one goal you're trying to accomplish. And so those are my goals for each of those.
Yeah. And Andrew, what was the submission process like? Did you get it on your first try, or tell us a little bit about what that was?
The first and I'd say most significant show house I did was Kips Bay, about 10 years ago, Kips Bay, New York. And then, as it is now, it's a major stamp of approval, at least in the New York market and maybe nationally. And it's such a crowded field of very talented designers, particularly in New York. I always knew, coming up from where I had and where I'd worked before I established my own firm, that Kips Bay would be really a major stamp of approval for my work. And I'd say midstream in my career, I mean, midstream as it is now, I got to a point where I felt I could submit. And it was just before things were extremely digital. So I remember we had to have the submission process was, I think, 10 photos, but they had to be printed copies. You had to deliver an actual physical package to the deciding board. And I did get in the first time. It was beginner's luck, or if it was just the right fit, because I know in hindsight, I think that's kind of worth remarking on, because there's many talented designers who submit each year, and I often wonder what is the criterion by which they select, because they have to create some decision making boundaries, and it's timing probably helps a lot.
Be honest, did any of you get rejected your first time? And then how did you overcome that?
Well, I'll say that I didn't know. I also did Kips Bay, New York this year, and I didn't know that there was a submission process. I always thought that it was, you got chosen, which that's what happened with me. And when I got that call, it's kind of the call that you just can't say no to. So that was really stressful, because I didn't know if I was prepared. I'd never done a show house before. This was my first one, and then I'm getting to Andrew's
You were prepared.
point. Okay, good. Thank you. But I was stressed and scared and all the things. But as Andrew mentioned, for New York, this was like the Oscars of show houses. So not something you can say no to. So we had to jump right in. But yeah, I think if I had gotten rejected and tried, it'd been a real sad moment.
Okay. And so let's say you get in, you submit, or they ask you to. What is the next step in the process? Do you get to pick your space, or do they assign it to you? Kristen, let's go with you.
For ours, we had to prioritize which areas we want. I think it was like 1 through 6. And then they sort of balance out who's in what area and let you know which space you got. So kind of a hybrid of being able to put your top choices in, but you didn't get like the final say.
For example, with your space, which is outdoors, was that your number one choice, number two?
No, it wasn't even on my list.
That wasn't
No, it wasn't even on my list, and I was kind of disappointed when I didn't get any of the spaces that I wanted, and so that was, you're going to experience little hiccups in the process, and so, but once we got into it and got designing, it was like, okay, this is the first space they're going to see. We had the front porch and a balcony above it, so it ended up being good.
Awesome. Everick, I feel like you have clients all over the U.S., and so it's different budgets for different markets. How do you usually start navigating the budget for your show houses?
I start with, I'm not spending any money. And that's code for saying, I implore you to try to find a sponsor or a collaborator. But honestly, generally speaking, I would say I want to spend as little as possible. I have not been called for Kips Bay yet, so that's a different strategy. Because I will say in that market, in that presentation, you're going to want to put your best foot forward. So I would spend as much as I could and get the collaborators and sponsorship.
Okay, let's talk about sponsors. Andrew, what were some of your favorite experiences with some of your sponsors? And what was it that made it special, but other than like the monetary
I
value?
want to make sure there's sponsors and there's like collaborators, right?
Correct.
So like in my experience, there was a few sponsors and they were offered up as part of the Kips Bay package. There was a contractor to do certain work because I had some electrical and I had certain things, but I definitely needed to supplement beyond that. They were spread thin. And then there was Benjamin Moore Paints, which is a nice gesture, but frankly, not the most important gesture. I think you have to just make, as you said, put your best foot forward in all regards. And so, using those, it's important to create the relationships. So to avail yourself to who is offered up as a sponsor and show them in a good light too. So that's one area that you really want to be very strong in. And I liberally used Benjamin Moore Paints along with a number of other finishes. And then there's the collaborators, which I understand is a different thing, but it's really the team you put together. So you start with the sponsors and you make the most of what their products, how the best that you can relative to your design or your product.
Okay. And how let's say, some people have PR people who are amazing and do everything for you. But for those that don't, how do you even start that conversation? Where do you start? Keisha, let's go with you.
Well, I didn't have a PR team. I was told I should, but I did not. And I have to say it worked out in my favor, right? And I know that it can be where you feel like you're pretty much at a deficit if you didn't have someone to be there to handhold, to kind of guide you through the process. But I was fortunate that the room garnered a certain level of attention that it kind of took off, and
It was fabulous.
okay.
Let's just say it was spectacular.
No, it really means a lot. I appreciate it because, like I said, I'd never done a show house before. And so to your point, there was some horror stories, but I made it through. And so it's definitely a big deal for me that it was so well received. But with the PR, I think relationships are so important, right? You don't realize that along the way, you're engaging with people who are willing to support you, who are like, listen, what do we need to do? How can we promote? I feel like PR for me were the people who ended up showing up at the show house. At night, I would go to bed and I would see all these like pings, and my DMs were like endless with people who were just reposting the room. And that was huge because now that's marketing, right? All these folks who were visiting from different states were talking about the room. And so that also, I think, made other magazines and other publications pay attention. And then they would take it and do their stories on it. So, but I do feel like PR is definitely something that's important. And as you start to kind of grow and move your business, I think it's important when you're starting out, right? It can be very critical, but also when you start to hit to a different place, I think it's important then to kind of take you to that next level. So.
Wait, can I just jump in? Because you and I talked about what you were doing. Was there any time that you weren't at the show house when it was open?
Yeah, so that part, again, because this was new for me, and I think it's important, even in talking to other designers who participate in show houses, you have to be there. It's so important to be there. And that alone was a job in itself. Like my work, in some ways, I won't say it suffered, but it definitely came to a full stop. And we had to inform clients and say, listen, we're doing this huge project. This is critical to my career. I want you to support me and know that, no, I cannot oversee your delivery. I can't ship the pillow. I can't do anything. I really can't even talk to you until June 14th, right? Meanwhile, it's April something. But yes, I had to be there. I was there, and that made a huge difference in the process.
Kristen, tell us, like, let's just say, for example, you really love this pattern from Schumacher and you're like, oh my God, I need to have this on all the pillows in my outdoor space. How would you approach that conversation?
First, I would contact the Schumacher rep and tell them that I have this great opportunity for them. And I'm working on a show house and it's for a charity. And, we'd love to showcase their fabric. So I think the more that you can communicate the benefits to the manufacturer, whoever it is, even the installer, the drapery person, whoever's on your team, I think just communicating the benefits before you do the ask. And it always helps if you have relationships set up with your vendors already. We kind of talked about, whether you go through a showroom to purchase stuff, whether you purchase direct. If you have a relationship with your salesperson, let them come in and show you new things. I think all that building of relationships helps when you do get to the show house stage, to be able to get people on board to support you.
Andrew, you want to add?
No, I agree. I would just say, like, I found when I did it that, there's people, it elevates everybody that's associated who touches it even a little bit. So it's exciting for them, unless they're completely disinterested, most vendors or tradespeople that you might need to get association and let them know that they'll be noted in the book of credits, and it's advertising for them as well. And you just have to be super direct and, kind and very appreciative, of course, which I was.
And send a thank you after.
Yes, all of it. And just make them feel like they're in, like, I couldn't, because it's true. It's not that I'm putting this on that you can't do it without them,
No.
but you absolutely cannot do it without lots of great vendors and participants. And, that's their way to be on the grid.
Yeah, and every vendor is looking for exposure. So don't forget the part about selling, how they will be exposed, either in your social media feed and or the press that you get. So depending on if they are the major statement in your room, then they're the major message.
And the other thing I wanted to say is you don't have to have a previous relationship with some of these vendors. In my case, I did not have a lot of pre-existing relationships with a lot of the vendors who worked with me, especially for the Pasadena Showcase House. With a lot of them, it was a direct, ask, very direct ask of I'm participating in this. It's an amazing opportunity. What charity and what does it support? And this is what I'm doing. And I would love to highlight your work or at least partner with any sort of collaboration in exchange for, and like everybody said, whether it's social media, photography, even to a certain extent, I promised professional photography that I would, with licensing, I would be happy to give that to them. So that's my way of sort of, saying thank you in a way. So I'm like, you can use these photos on your social media or website, whatever that is. Those things go a long way when it comes to these things. And then doing any specific highlights that they're asking for to really promote the brand.
I do want to jump in with something because we're here to be transparent, right? So
Always.
there is this other part. So yes, I too worked with some of the vendors that were shown in my room and many others who were not. And like Andrew said, very excited to be a part because it's a benefit for them as well. However, I'm getting all my yeses, and this is great. And then all of a sudden, behind every yes in the email was a credit card form. So what you don't realize also that you have to take into consideration is that you're on the hook for it, because if it breaks, you own it. And my room, when we calculated at the end, I think was pushing close to 400 grand in as far as a value. So every time someone walked in, I'd be like, don't sit on that. Always kind of like someone would brush by, or when little kids would come in, seriously, and they're running around and you're like, oh man. And, and I realized that was another reason why I wanted to be there all the time, because I could control some of that. So in addition to the money that you spend, you're also responsible for these goods. So they're saying yes, but truthfully, if it breaks or something happens, they're like, well, we're going to get our money regardless. Oh yeah, you have to have insurance. You can't participate in it without it, but still, right? Yeah.
Okay. So we want to get into fashion and function. I feel like we've talked some function. Let's get into the fashion part. Who was the client you had in mind for Everett? Let's start with you for your last show house. Who was it you? Was it a friend? Was it an imaginary person?
You picked the last one. So I'm going to go to the first one, which was the virtual, which I think was really interesting. It was through Badge. It was the Obsidian Virtual Concept House. And that one I picked to talk about because it was the first time that I was able to actually design specifically for a Black family. And so it was, at the time, I had never really thought out of the box about, well, how would I design and present for Black joy? And it was quite an amazing experience. It was very different than any other concept house that I had been involved with because it did require a specific client. But I enjoyed it because it got me way out of the box. My last show house, I had not a specific client in mind, but a concept. So the concept was bringing the outdoors in. And so what we did was bring outdoor furniture ideas to the indoors.
Ridoma, what about you? Who was your client?
Me. I designed it basically for me in both the cases. I wanted to do anything and everything without, no restrictions. And so, whether it was, pattern, the play on pattern, the play on color, going for things that normally, clients would run away from or be nervous about. I wanted to push it as far as I could, really experiment with my creativity. With the first one, with the kaleidoscope, we had complete freedom. So I really went in it with this whole, transportive sort of a, when you're in this place, you're transported to a whole other, universe sort of a thing is what I went for. With Pasadena, it was a bit different. I started off with, how I would like to do it. But in this case, we had a homeowner who was tied to the showcase house. And so there were certain things that we could and could not do, especially the things that were permanent. So the walls, the fixtures, things like that. So a lot of that had to be approved by the homeowner. So in that situation, it sort of turns into another client to a certain extent. And so, but in my approach was to pivot in a way where I worked with what her demands were and what the needs were for the permanent pieces, but then I pushed it even more with my soft furnishings and everything and anything that I knew I had control and that I had to take out. So I pushed it in my own way, and I really try to make the most of it. But so depending on different show houses do it differently. In some cases, there's no homeowner, there's nobody involved. And that's another thing to check, by the way, when you're, for any showcase house you're going into, whether it's a local one, national, is there a homeowner associated to it? Because then that makes it a very different, the whole approach there then changes quite a bit, actually, even if it's a showcase house.
Thank you. Let's get into some like the horror stories. Andrew, give us an example of something that, you really had your mind set on this vision, something messed up, something went oopsie, and how did you fix it?
I mean, you sort of set up one type of horror story, but for me, if I could pivot, I had it. When I did Kips Bay, I had chosen this interesting conversation around choosing your room, or is it chosen for you? It's a townhouse, and I'm thankful I had an instinct that a room that it seemed like everybody else was really not interested in was what I was interested in. It was the entry. It was not that great. It was initially, it was small and had a long hallway. So I kind of negotiated to get the hallway. They didn't really speak of the long hallway, but you had to enter this long hallway to then get into the foyer. The foyer was what was named as the room. So I said, can I also have the hallway upon entry, and then the powder room off of the foyer, because that wasn't really assigned either. So I did get those rooms, and that was great because I had more geography or more real estate to work with. But the horror story was that I didn't really predict is because it's the first room, every single designer and every delivery and every installation had to go through. So I couldn't install my room, and I'm not exaggerating, 1 iota, to like 2 a.m. the night before the New York Times was coming, and that was a drop dead date. I brought it. I did it. I was like, and I didn't even have any help back then. So I said industrious earlier. That's my industrious side. Like, there's no option of not showing up. So it was definitely a nail biter because I couldn't control the people who were just doing their own installations. And I couldn't even really implore them to I just had to let them finish, get out of the way, and then do my installation. But it worked. I'm here.
Chris and I saw you kind of jumped up at that. Was there any?
We had the same, and I think Keisha did too. You know, we had the same experience where you're the last one to go in, but you get the first pack up spot.
Yeah, I would like to chime in on that. So yes, I had a middle room that was at the top of the landing. So I was the last to go for everything. But my horror story was we installed these antique mirrors flanking the window, and which took about 4 weeks to create. It was all custom. It was like a greenish gold color, beautiful. I want to say maybe 3 days before our cutoff date, they're installing the one window. It was an Asian company. And I'm standing in the room watching them bring it in, right? They're like putting the glue on the wall. And all of a sudden, the daughter runs up the stairs and she's like, Opa, 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 which I assume means daddy or father in their language. And I just knew. I like literally did an about face and I walked in the other direction. And Joanna, who's my project manager, is like trying to like, what do we do? What do I do? And I said, you have to handle it. And lo and behold, the one that was on the truck, they didn't strap it and he moved the vehicle back and it ended up on the street in pieces. 3 days before the cutoff. And I'm freaking out. So Nazir is coming up like, Keisha, what do you, and I'm like, what do I do? So I'm thinking, okay, my fix is going to be that I'm going to have to wallpaper it. But as a designer, I'm like, I need that glass, right? And so I had to make a decision because now he's saying, I'm going to try that word. And I'm like, try isn't going to make it because I need this in 2 days because I'm at day 3 and there, when it's mic drop there, it's mic drop. It's what it is. And I had to make a decision and I was like, put it up. So they put up the one. And sure enough, in the 3 days, so everything for me moved because now they had to accommodate because we did sconces on the mirrors. So even though the mirror was there on day 3, I had to then schedule the electrician for another day. We had to do another install. And luckily they were gracious enough to work with me and gave me time. But you talk about pressure, like that's not what you want. But I never saw it. I don't know how it got cleaned up because I knew that if I had done that, I would have lost the control I needed to be in. And I was like, Keisha, you got to stay focused on this. And so I don't know how it broke, exactly how it happened, but everyone really supported. And that's something about the show house too. The designers do come together. Everyone works as a team because, thankful to whoever cleaned it up and figured it out because I was like, I'm not going out there. I'm not going out there.
You're like, I can't do that.
Good to know your limits.
Yeah, right. Say again?
It's good to know your limits and stand your ground.
Yep. I was like, that's not my strong suit.
Right.
Because I'm going to cry like a 5-year-old. And I tell my tantrum.
You touched on something as far as like camaraderie. And so at the end of the day, when you design your projects, you are the leads and you are the main point of contact between contractors, wallpaper hangers, etc. With Showhouses, though, you're sharing all the resources with 20 plus designers. What are some like pro tips or just some things that bettered your communication amongst the other designers in order to make sure that you all shared the resources equally, etc.?
We all look at each other. No, look, Ridima and I met actually doing a show house together, and I had somewhat of a horror story. I had a main light fixture. It changed twice and then didn't come in. And fortunately, Ridima had a backup and not only helped me with getting that light installed, but then I had some other issues. And she's like, why don't we do this? It's like midnight.
I took over.
And and we started working because I was like, Keisha, I'm like, I got to turn my back and walk away from this because I'm going to kill somebody.
Yeah.
And Rhythm is like, wait, come look at this. So I was re-inspired. But what I have found is even when I did the virtual house where we all spoke to each other via Zoom, it was the most amazing experience because to this day, some of those people, there were 21, 22 of us in total that met weekly, daily sometimes, that are still in touch. Some of them I have met in person. was in line one day. My back was to the person and they were like, Everett Brown. And I turned around, I'm like, Linda, like, wow, how does that happen? We've never met in person, but because of the dynamic of working with each other, helping each other in the virtual world, it was about not only getting your drawings and your renderings, but it was CAD drawings. And then it was, how do you make that look real? And so some of us were more technologically advanced than others. Some of us could draw. And so we began to collaborate and help one another.
What was the time commitment, would you say, that you had to dedicate to this? So it's like you already have, you know, 8 to 10 clients. How did you find time in the day to do a show house?
Well, I already said I didn't. Business came to a halt. It did. It just had to. There was no other way that I could do it. I'm a small firm. And so there was no other way to navigate it. I mean, of course, we didn't just like close the doors. You know, we're still communicating, sending emails, touching base. But overall, I couldn't be in 2 places at once. And it really was, for us, we had 6 weeks total. So it was fast and furious. And one of the shortest time frames that I was told with New York, I think normally they give 8 weeks, but it took them a while to find the house. And so we had 6 weeks and then the post, right? Because after that, then there's a breakdown and there's a lot of commitments, not only just in the daytime. For New York, we had, I think, a total of 12 social events that they expected us to be at. So there was like, they did an event with Chase. So they hosted a Chase event there. A Douglas Elliman event was hosted there, and you want to be there because it's an opportunity to meet folks. So you would be there from the day, like from 10 to 6, and then there'd be an event from 6 to 9. So you're there the entire day. So it was hard to manage work at the same time, but luckily business is still open.
Yeah, the pre, you know, before the showcase happens, yes, you can still sort of, you know, squeeze it in with existing work, you know, while you're sort of doing the project management of, you know, when is this sofa going to be delivered? You can at least manage that. But just like Keisha said, when the first day, opening day, you're there. I was even same thing with me. I was there from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. every single day, including weekends, 7 days a week for that whole entire month. And you know, it really, it gets, you know, it gets hard, but that's the way. In this case, you're meeting everybody, potential clients, so many things happening in that moment, and you want to be in the space to make sure you have control over similar things. You know, nobody's walking on the rug or touching things that they shouldn't. But just again, you're the only one who can vocalize and explain your idea and your concept. Nobody can do it better than you. So that's another thing that you have to consider, is that time frame. You're definitely, if you want to get the most out of it, you need to physically be there no matter what.
Yeah, and I think the other part of that, you had kind of asked a question earlier, Byron, which was, who was your client? And I think a part of the pressure is that because you don't have a client, every detail falls on you. You can't say, oh, my client didn't have taste.
Yes.
Or, oh, my client didn't want to spend money, because
Yes.
that client is you. And that's an intense amount of pressure. Because I was thinking, as everybody was talking, I was like, well, show houses are like another client. And I was like, it's a little different, but it's intense.
Can I say something to that? So what was great, I don't know if there's going to be a question you're going to ask or not, so I may be moving ahead, but for me, one of the amazing experience of that was that everyone's reaction, like when you work with someone, you know that they're going to like it because you're partnering with them, right? You're designing for them. So the end result, you know, they're going to love it. If a magazine decides that they love it and they want to pick it up, you're like, okay, well, House Beautiful loves it. Great. But when folks pick up that magazine and they thumb through it and they see the work, I don't know if they love it. I don't know if people are like, yes, this was amazing, because it kind of stops there. But in the show house, it was like the most unreal experience to have people walk in and just be like, oh my God, oh wow, I can't, like, it was priceless to have that go on for an entire 30 days and be there. Like, the confidence that I left with, like, and I wasn't expecting that. I mean, just imagine someone pouring into you and complimenting you and appreciating the work, right? I was not expecting that experience. And I would say for me, that was the real priceless moment of the show house. Yeah.
Kristen, at what point in your business's life cycle were you when you did your first show house?
I think like midway ish. Been in business 4 years.
And do you feel like, what do you feel were some of the benefits from it?
I think kind of similar to what everybody has said so far, continuing to develop vendor relationships, meeting other designers, same thing, 20-ish designers working on it. And we all work together and help each other. And, on the breakdown, I had some stuff in inventory and we had to replace our high-end designer light fixtures with a regular light fixture if the homeowner didn't buy it. And so, the girl that was next to me, I was like, well, I have an extra chandelier. You can have it. So I think the camaraderie amongst the designers is a really cool element.
So you were like midway. Was anybody like it was like their first year and this is really what put them on the map? Is that you?
That's me.
Okay.
That's me. First year was the Kaleidoscope, and then second year was Pasadena. So yeah, first time. Again, it's one of those things where, the opportunity arises and it was a yes or a no. Should I do this? Should I not? And it was, I go with my gut. And for Pasadena, in many ways, for me, I'm how am I going to do this? I don't know, but I'm going to say yes. And again, like the intention and the goal was, all right, this is going to, give me that exposure that I'm looking for in the local market. So, and then you just jump right into it. So I think I was one of the few ones who did it very earlier on. And even while I was meeting several designers in the showcase house, most of them had been doing it for years and years, and I was one of the newer ones. So it was interesting to get everybody's insight on why they're doing it for so many years. They keep coming back to do it. So it was a pretty big learning experience from that aspect.
I feel like most of you designed in your neighborhood, right? Like your locale. Did any of you do a show house that was in a different city other than where you live?
I did, yeah.
You did.
The Berkshire. So the Kaleidoscope was in the Berkshires. I designed it in LA.
So,
I showed up a week before for the install.
so
And that was during the pandemic, the thick of the pandemic.
okay.
Yeah.
And so what are some tips for navigating that, designing from abroad or from far away?
Communication was key. I mean, it was excessive amount of emails, Zoom calls, video calls, FaceTime, with whoever the project manager and coordination that was happening at, on site. And then your drawings, paperwork, very similar to a virtual one, I would say, where I had to make sure that everything was perfectly explained and done in those documents so that whoever is executing it there knows and has no questions or any concerns around it. So it was a lot of that overall communication. And then I showed up there a week before install. The whole approach was just be ready for anything and everything to go wrong. And it did in so many ways. And you had to be in that, Tim Gunn, like make it work, make it work moment where, all right, a few things were not installed correctly. The lighting was off, whatever it was. And some things just did not go the way I wanted to, despite the drawings, the measurements, despite it all. There were a few things that were just not working. And then you cannot panic. You cannot freak out. It's a few days to go. This is the pandemic. So I cannot just go down the street and buy something to replace this or, So you really, really had to just be prepared to make those moments work, especially if you're doing it from a distance like that. You have to just have that attitude of, it's fine. Nobody's going to know. Only you know. Nobody's going to know.
Did any of you get a client out of a show house?
I did.
Tell us
I got a
about
couple clients and some people inquired and I didn't get them, but it was evidence that, there's the direct hit of people seeing your work and wanting to, inquire about you and hopefully work with you. But then in the broader sense, I feel like I've gotten clients throughout the years, in part because I have a level of stature that they may want, or that's a stamp of approval. And I would be in it for the long game. If I was giving somebody advice to do this, everything that I've heard you all say is like, they're reminding me of the great experience of doing Kips Bay and some other show houses. I've done smaller things that are like that. They become, your ongoing advertisements, your PR, your personality, another window into your portfolio. And it's super exciting initially when you get that attention and that thrust of people and press, and that's amazing. And that I can be there right now in my head. But long term, it's the fact that you're feathering your nest, and that's how I would look at it. And so even on the financial side, what you put in, if you can actually pay for it and write the check, go for it. You have to put your best foot forward, because there's no point in doing it less than amazing. You want to like really stand out, even if there's other standouts. There's a level, and if you've hit that, and that'll pay off, I think, indefinitely.
Yeah, and I was just going to piggyback on that, because it's not only the clients you get, it's the editors you meet.
Yeah.
Architectural Digest, Elle Decor, you name it, House Beautiful. Everybody's walking into the show house, and that could be your link to the next client. So I found that the show houses have been really amazing with introducing my product, my brand to the editors.
Definitely agree.
What's one thing that you would go back and change if you could to save time, money, resources during a show house?
Don't do it. No. No, there's something interesting, and let me see if I can segue, but remind me, because I was going to say, you asked us at what point in our careers did we jump into doing a show house? And my funny response is I did it midway. I've been doing this almost 25 years. So do that math. But one of the things I was going to say is, if you're starting out, it might be a good time to do a show house, because you don't have a bunch of clients. So you can focus on doing that show house, meet vendors and manufacturers and editors. At the same time, I came in, I probably did my first, 3 or 4 years ago. I was never really focused on doing show houses. It just wasn't my thing. And I ended up doing it because it was for a good cause. And what I learned is that good cause was about meeting other designers, about meeting editors, understanding how to manage my time and my finances better. So the show house experience is amazing. Tell me what that question was that I stole this moment for. And let me see if I can segue.
If you could go back in time. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Like, tell a younger version of yourself.
so I listen, I think it's really one of the things that helped me out a lot was reaching out to one of my manufacturers to sponsor me and collaborate on the show house, because I didn't have to worry about where I was going to get my furnishings and my decor from. It all came from one place. And so that I had learned after having done several, looking back, that I felt much more comfortable, less stressed when I had somebody supporting me up front.
Anyone else? Okay, let's see. Oh, so let's say it's the opening night of the show house. What happens next? How do you continue to promote it? Because it's usually open for like a month or a few weeks. How do you continue to get people in the door or promote your work? Talk about it.
A PR person.
Well, obviously, social media, you have to but to put I'm looking right now at people that help me with my social media. Like you can do a lot and you have to bring a lot. But one thing I would never take on would be my own social media, particularly under the pressure of show houses. So I would say you just make sure you put that in your budget and get somebody good and go for it, because anything a little less than amazing will just be not great, and you'll miss out on mining the gold that you can.
Yeah, it's funny. I got a text message 2 days ago from a fellow designer who sends me a picture of my room in a coffee table book. And I'm like, where'd you get that? It's a book called Effect. I don't know who the publisher is. She's like getting information. She's like, it just showed up at my office. And so even something like that, like it seems to be a book that's about show houses, because there were a couple of others. She sent me 2 other designers who are in the book. And so, yeah, it's like there are other people, other outlets out there who are also trying to use it for their own. I mean, I never got a call. I don't know how they got the information, how they got the photo, but there's a real coffee table book with photos. And I know, right? I mean, and interesting enough, it is something to look into, because it's like, well, who gave you the rights to do this thing? But it's an actual book. But again, right or wrong, that's another level of promotion that now will end up in people's homes or companies. So outside of just things like that, then yes, all you do have is social media to continue to kind of expand it, really.
And I also for Pasadena, I ended up reaching out to my clients, my vendors, everybody, and I invited everybody to come and see the space if they had time. With some of my, with I mean, a handful of clients who actually even showed interest, were excited, we would love to come. We had we were given a handful of tickets, that we can pass out to friends and family. So I even reserved a few tickets for them, saying, if you're as my clients, this is a a gift. Like, just show up. Tickets are on me. And if you want to bring friends and family along with you, let me know. So besides social media and all of that, it was more of that one-on-one outreach that I did with some of my vendors there, with my clients, friends, and family, to be like, please come, show me your support. And everybody did. Everybody showed up. It was very nice. Every time I'd see somebody show up through the door that I know really well, the excitement of just seeing somebody, it was nice to have that there. Yeah.
I did the same, but I had one client who came in and she said, 6 weeks, huh? I'm like, no, no, we're still at 12 to 16 months. No, this is show house magic. This is not applicable to clients. No.
Where's
Okay.
my sofa?
She's like, oh, this is what you've been up to.
Just the magic of being able, think about it. When you have clients, you're telling them, oh, you got to wait 10 weeks. You got to wait 12 weeks. We're waiting, all these lengthy times. And now she's looking at this completed room that I did in 6 weeks. Because of course you're talking about that. That's a part of the whole thing. And so her thing was like, well, if you could create this in 6 weeks, why am I still waiting? And I'm like,
Because she
Show house
still has to say yes.
well,
That's the major reason.
that should have been the answer.
If they step aside
Give me full
100%,
control.
you can shave off a couple months,
There you go.
right?
That's right.
Put some money down. It's amazing.
Okay, I'm gonna just send like a final comment, and then I'll give it over to the audience if they have any questions. But I want to remind everyone, and I'm sure some of you have, but every single time you get these moments, it's kind of like a good report card, right? It's like an A, like you got an A plus. And so these types of moments are great for you to reanalyze, reassess your fees and restructure them and charge more, because essentially now you're at like a different level of designer, right? They could have chosen, I don't know, out of thousands, they chose you to be one of 25. And so I want to congratulate everyone here for all the amazing work that you do. And it's so great. I mean, the images don't even do it justice, but it's just such beautiful work to see these types of projects come together in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever that is, all the blood, sweat, and tears. I want to be Oprah, so if anybody wants to ask a question, I'll just go to you. Okay. Here.
So Keisha, I understand that you designed that rug.
Yes.
How did you do that in 6 weeks and get it made and installed?
Yeah.
Because let me just say that I still dream about.
Oh,
It's
thank you.
just
Thank you so much.
so
Thank you. I appreciate that. So that's an interesting story. So the rug company was one of our sponsors. And so, of course, we have a meeting, a Zoom call with all the designers. And literally after the Zoom call, let's say if it ended at 1:00, they're like, any of you who would like to go in and see the house for the first time, it'll be open from 3 to 8 on that day. And so we knew that. And so literally the meeting is over and I'm in the car because my office is in New Jersey and I'm heading because I'm like, I got to see this place immediately. But from that moment, the emails start coming in from the sponsors because they also want you to choose them. So one of the emails that came through was from the rug company. And I'm thinking to myself, I would love to work with them. They're one of my vendors. I do purchase from them. But I was like, okay, this is a great opportunity. And in looking at the space, I knew that in order to make a big impact, I needed that wall-to-wall carpet situation. So they said, okay, Keisha, we need this in a week. They're like, we need it 1 week. You got to pull the concepts together. Because I did business with them, my sales rep said to me, Keisha, just send like a storyboard. Because I'm like, okay, what do you need, right? Like, how did we work this so fast? So she said, just send a storyboard. So I create this whole room that's royal blue and navy and white. And I send her this true thing. I send it to her. It's beautiful. I have all these inspirations. And they're like, oh, this is great. It's fabulous. They took about 2 days, 2.5 days, and sent me an email and said, Keisha, we sent it to the team, and the imagery is very close to another designer carpet design. And I'm thinking, no, which meant they couldn't do it because it's, copy infringement, whatever. So I'm like, no way. So now my days are going down. So this is now Thursday. And she's like, we need it Monday. Like, we really need it by Monday. Otherwise, there's no way we can produce it. And we can't do a hand loomed. We could only do a woven jacquard. Now, what you can't see there is that the woven jacquard, it's a print. So now I work in a certain space. We're not doing a printed carpet. Like, what are you talking about, right? I need to see the dimension and what part is silk and what part is wool. And so I'm stressing over that. But they're like, Keisha, we are the rug company. Don't worry, we'll be fine. And so I kind of let that part go. But that was Thursday. Friday, I had to work. I'm not kidding you. I spent on my couch, I think Saturday, I didn't even change out of my night clothes. I spent the entire Saturday and Sunday drawing and conceptualizing this thing. And this is what came up. I did 2 designs in the 2 days. And after consulting with my team and my family, this was the one that ended up. And I was able to get it in on the Monday, and then they did it. And it arrived literally also like 3 days before installation. So I was on like pins and needles, for it to come in. Oh, they absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was great. But also was a stretch for me to be able to put myself out there. It was very vulnerable, to do something like this. And so also, again, I designed for projects, but on this stage, I was stressed. Like, was this going to translate well? Was it going to, were people going to love it or hate it? So, but I was happy that it worked out.
Wait, you said you started with royal blue, or did I not hear?
Yes, I did. And so
And you
in
ended
that
up-
process, because what this ended up being was a floral, a leaf motif. It was a leaf pattern. So obviously leaf green, which is also my favorite color. And in 14 years in business, I'd never designed in green. I would always talk my clients out of it. I wear the hell out of it. People buy it for me all the time. My closet is full with it, but I never designed a room in green. And then this came out. So it worked out.
Hi. So I was fortunate this year to see both of you, both Ridma's room and Keisha's room in person. And what I know as a designer is that everything is a choice. Everything large and small is a choice. Both of you exhibited great measure of courage in the choices. Like you said, it's a vulnerable moment, and you're not really sure are people going to love it or hate it. For all of us who, aspire to do show houses and things like that, anyone can answer these questions. But number one, where did you sort of, what place did you go in your own thinking to sort of overcome the vulnerability? And then 2, when people come and visit your show house space, how did you articulate things that maybe people came in and said, I don't get it? And sometimes that happens because essentially as a designer, you're saying something new that people perhaps haven't seen or heard before.
I'll take the second part of the question. I knew that because I was between 2 spaces, it was all about feeling, experience. I couldn't be another room because it would have gotten lost. Hence why it was one color palette. That was intentional. I needed it to stand out because I flowed. I had no walls. So I was like, I can't just be another room, right? So I always, when I talked about the room, I said it needed to be bold and quiet at the same time. I needed it to be quiet because I didn't want to compete, but I needed it to be strong so that it would grab your attention. So for me, the design was all about feeling, and it worked because people would walk in and it wasn't so much about, oh my God, I don't understand this abstract rug, or I don't get why you chose this or why you chose that. It was like, I could sit here for hours. People would say that, right? Or they were like, there's so much energy in the room. And I was like, yes, because I knew that would work. That would make it do what it needed to do and not be just another room that you're trying to be like, oh, that piece is so beautiful, or I love what you did here. And some of that was there. But overall, what people got from the space was emotion. they were evoked. And so that was intentional with the pieces and the color palette that I ended up deciding on.
I think it's the same thing for me with the, again, going back to Pasadena, it was the largest space in the house that I had. And, after some of the obstacles that we had to face, in terms of what we can and cannot do, once I knew what my boundaries were, I went in full force. And this was my first showcase. So just like everybody, I wanted to go all out and make my, the best impression possible. And after I remember this, after I did the install, I did a walkthrough of the entire house myself, and I just knew that my space was very different from the rest of the house. And my reaction, I remember telling my husband, people are gonna love it or they're gonna hate it. It's gonna be very extreme reactions. And it was. And when you were talking about you're standing in your space and people are walking by, and when they don't know that you're the designer, and you listen, that's the part where it's a lot of those mental notes that you're making of, it's amazing. And that sort of research, I mean, data analysis or data, you're right there getting opinion. And in our case, it was 25,000 people who walked through the entire month, and just seeing everybody's reaction to my space of what they liked, what they didn't like. So it was very interesting to see that whole element.
Okay, I think that's it. That concludes our talk. Thank you so much, Universal, for having us. We really enjoy
Thank you.
being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Byron Cadero.
Thank you.